Imagine you are standing in a crowded subway station. It's hot, you're tired, and you're running late for an important meeting. Suddenly, someone shoves past you, nearly knocking you over, and they don't even bother to look back or apologize. In a fraction of a second, your heart begins to race. Your vision narrows. Your jaw tightens. You feel a surge of heat rising from your chest to your face. In that moment, you aren't a rational, civilized human being anymore. You are a biological machine primed for combat. Welcome to the world of anger. It is perhaps the most misunderstood emotion in the human repertoire. We are taught to be ashamed of it, to hide it, and to suppress it. But anger is not a moral failing. It is a biological survival mechanism. Today, we are going to deconstruct this architecture of rage. We are going to look under the hood of the human brain to understand why we get angry, how our biology betrays us, and why the modern world has turned our survival instincts into a daily prison. To manage anger, we must first respect its history. Millions of years ago, on the African savanna, anger was a gift. Evolution is not interested in your happiness, it is interested in your survival. In a world filled with predators and rival tribes, anger was the internal software that activated the fight in the fight-or-flight response. When your ancestors faced a threat, their brains needed to make a split-second decision, run or fight. Anger provided the fuel for the fight. It flooded the body with adrenaline and cortisol, diverted blood flow from the digestive system to the large muscle groups, and sharpened the senses. It was a high-octane energy boost designed to help you defend your territory, your food, or your family. The problem? Evolution is slow, but technology is fast. We are walking around in 2026 with hardware that is 200,000 years old. Your brain cannot distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and a passive-aggressive comment on your social media post. To your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, both are existential threats. We are living in a low-threat world with high-alert biology. Let's look at the corporate structure of your brain. At the very front, you have the prefrontal cortex, PFC. This is the CEO. It's responsible for logic, long-term planning, social etiquette, and impulse control. It's the part of you that knows that screaming at your boss is a bad career move. Deep inside the temporal lobes sits the amygdala. This is the security guard. Its only job is to scan the environment for threats. When the amygdala perceives a threat, whether it's a physical punch or a verbal insult, it performs what psychologists call an amygdala hijack. It literally shuts down the connection to the prefrontal cortex. The security guard locks the CEO out of the building. Why? Because the CEO is too slow. If a car is hurtling toward you, you don't want your prefrontal cortex to analyze the make and model, you want your amygdala to make you jump out of the way. But in a social setting, this hijack is disastrous. You say things you regret. You break things you love. You act on autopilot, driven by a primitive part of your brain that doesn't understand the concept of a consequence. Many people view anger as an attitude problem, but it is a systemic physiological event. When you get angry, your body enters a state of high stress. Your blood pressure spikes. Your heart rate skyrockets. Your glucose levels rise to provide immediate energy. If this happens once in a while, the body recovers. But many of us live in a state of chronic anger. This is the slow burn. When you are constantly irritated, frustrated, or resentful, your body is bathed in a toxic soup of stress hormones. Over time, this does catastrophic damage. Research in American cardiology shows that people with high hostility scores are 3 times more likely to suffer a heart attack than their calmer peers. Chronic anger weakens the immune system, leads to digestive issues, and causes chronic headaches. It even shrinks the brain, literally. High levels of cortisol can damage the hippocampus, the area of the brain responsible for memory and learning. When you refuse to manage your anger, you aren't just hurting the people around you, you are physically corroding your own vessel. Beyond biology, anger is fueled by our internal maps of the world. We all have a set of rules about how the world should work. People should drive safely. My partner should understand my needs without me saying them. Life should be fair. Anger is the emotion that arises when our shoulds collide with reality. We feel a sense of moral outrage. We feel that a boundary has been crossed or an injustice has been done. The intensity of our anger is often proportional to the rigidity of our expectations. If your expectations are brittle, you will break often. If your map of the world is too rigid, you will find yourself in a constant state of war with reality. Part of the management process is realizing that while your feelings are valid, your rules for the world might be unrealistic. The first step toward mastery is mapping the minefield. Everyone has different triggers. For some, it is the feeling of being disrespected. For others, it is helplessness or injustice. Think back to the last 3 times you felt genuine rage. What was the common thread? Was it the feeling of being ignored? The feeling of being trapped? Once you name your triggers, they lose their power. You move from a reactive state to an observational state. Instead of saying, "I am angry," you start saying, "I notice that I am feeling triggered by this person's tone." This small shift in language creates a gap between the stimulus and the response. And in that gap, your freedom lies. In American culture, we have been fed a very specific lie about how to handle anger. It's the steam kettle theory. The idea is that anger builds up inside you like steam in a pressure cooker, and if you don't let it out, you'll eventually explode. This has led to the rise of rage rooms, where you pay to smash televisions with sledgehammers, or the advice to just go punch a pillow or scream into the void. But here is the cold, hard truth from decades of psychological research: catharsis is a myth. In fact, it's worse than a myth, it's a trap. Studies show that when you act out your anger, even in a controlled environment like hitting a punching bag while thinking about the person who hurt you, you aren't releasing the anger. You are rehearsing it. You are literally training your brain to associate frustration with physical aggression. You are strengthening the neural pathways of rage. The more you vent, the more reactive you become. You aren't cooling the fire, you are practicing how to be a flamethrower. To manage anger effectively, we have to stop thinking of it as a fluid that needs to be drained, and start thinking of it as a chemical fire that needs to be starved of oxygen. One of the most profound breakthroughs in modern neuroscience comes from Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, a Harvard-trained neuroanatomist. She discovered something that can change your life if you truly grasp it: the 90-second rule. When you have an emotional reaction to a trigger, there is a chemical process that happens in your body. From the moment the amygdala sounds the alarm, a flush of chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol, is released into your bloodstream. These chemicals cause your heart to race and your muscles to tense. However, here is the secret: that entire chemical surge, from start to finish, takes exactly 90 seconds to flush out of your system. If you are still angry after 90 seconds, it is no longer because of the original trigger. It is because you are choosing to stay there. You are re-triggering yourself by replaying the story in your head. "I can't believe he said that. Who does he think he is? He always does this." Every time you replay the thought, you trigger a fresh 90-second cycle of chemicals. You are keeping yourself in a loop of rage. If you can simply observe the physical sensation of the anger and breathe through it for just a minute and a half without feeding the story, the biological wave will pass on its own. To master the 90 seconds, you have to understand that anger is rarely a standalone emotion. In psychology, we call anger a secondary emotion. It acts like a bodyguard for more vulnerable feelings. Think of an iceberg. Anger is the tip that shows above the water. It's loud, it's visible, and it's intimidating. But beneath the surface, under the waterline of the subconscious, are the primary emotions: hurt, shame, fear, exhaustion, or grief. It is much easier to feel angry than it is to feel rejected. It is much more empowering to feel rage than it is to feel helpless. When we get angry, it gives us a false sense of control. We use anger to shield ourselves from the pain of our own vulnerability. The next time you feel a surge of rage, ask yourself the golden question: what is the pain behind this power? If you can identify the primary emotion, I'm not actually mad at my wife for forgetting the groceries, I'm actually feeling unappreciated and overwhelmed at work, the anger usually dissolves because its bodyguard job is no longer needed. You've addressed the root cause. When we are in a state of anger, our perception of reality becomes warped. We start wearing rage glasses, and they distort everything we see through what psychologists call cognitive distortions. The most common distortion in anger is mind reading. We assume we know exactly why someone did what they did. He cut me off because he's a selfish jerk who thinks he owns the road. We attribute the worst possible motives to others. Another common one is magnification. We take a small inconvenience and turn it into a catastrophe. This broken printer has ruined my entire week. And finally, there is labeling. Instead of saying, he made a mistake, we say, he is an idiot. Once we label someone, we stop seeing them as a human being and start seeing them as an enemy. This makes it much easier to justify our rage. Part of management is learning to clean your glasses. It's about challenging these thoughts before they become actions. It's asking, is there any other possible explanation for this person's behavior? There is a famous quote often attributed to Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Unmanaged anger lives in a world where there is no space. Stimulus happens, response follows instantly. You are cut off, you scream. You are insulted, you hit back. You are a machine. Mindfulness and anger management are about widening the gap. It's about creating enough space between the shove and the shout so that you can decide who you want to be in that moment. Do you want to be a person who loses their dignity over a parking spot? Or do you want to be a person who is in command of their own spirit? Widening the gap starts with the body. When you feel the pre-symptoms, the sweaty palms, the dry mouth, that is your signal to step back. Physically move away. Go to another room. Wash your face with cold water. You are not giving up the fight, you are regaining your prefrontal cortex. You are putting the CEO back in charge. We have traveled through the biological trenches of the brain, deconstructed the myths of our culture, and looked deep into the iceberg of our own hidden vulnerabilities. But the journey doesn't end with understanding. It begins with application. As we close this exploration into the architecture of rage, I want you to remember one final truth: anger is not your enemy, but it is a terrible master. Think of anger like fire. In a fireplace, it provides warmth and light, it can cook your food and keep your home safe. But when that same fire escapes the hearth, it consumes everything in its path. It doesn't care about your relationships, your career, or your health. It only knows how to burn. Management is not about extinguishing your fire. A person who cannot feel anger is a person who cannot recognize injustice. We need our anger. But we need it as a signal, not a commander. When you feel that heat rising, don't let it drive the car. Let it be the check engine light that tells you something is wrong, something is unfair, or a boundary has been crossed. The road to mastery is not a straight line. There will be days when the 90-second rule feels impossible. There will be moments when the security guard in your brain wins and the CEO is locked out. That's okay. You are a biological work in progress. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Every time you catch yourself before you speak, every time you choose a breath over a scream, you are literally rewiring your brain for a better life. You have the tools now. You have the stop technique, the halt check, and the understanding of the iceberg. Use them. Not just for the people around you, but for the person you see in the mirror. You deserve to live a life that isn't dictated by your triggers. You deserve the peace that comes with being the captain of your own soul. Control your anger, or it will control you. The fire is in your hands. Use it to light the way, not to burn the bridge. Thank you for watching/listening.